There we go.
Okay.
All right. Now you
Heck yeah.
can you go check
Yeah, if we're live on
on YouTube?
YouTube. Okay. I see the link. I hear myself.
All right. Mic check. How's the volume on there? I had to change some Discord or not Discord OBS settings.
Well, of me waiting. Okay. I'm probably good if you want to turn yourself up just a little bit. Otherwise, all is good.
Yeah, my audio input's always weird. I have myself up 5 decibels and it's never enough. Let's go to like
Sheesh.
9.
All right.
All right. Is that sounding better?
Yeah. Sounds good to me. If anyone else is watching on the live stream portion wants to uh report in on how our audio is sounding, just going to send this link around. Here. Okay. Do do do. Sorry, everybody. We're just getting set up here. In the meantime, if anybody's got any questions, obviously feel free to drop those in the chat. We will get to them later.
We will hopefully be answering any question that we can.
Yeah, of course, of course. Okay, that should be all right. One more place here, and then I'm ready to start. All right. I am ready whenever you are.
All right. 1 second. I am slightly increasing the size of things.
Okay. Gotta get that. Gotta get it looking
Perfect.
perfect.
All right. Looks like we're pretty much good to go.
All right. So, well, I suppose I'll kick us off. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming through. This is Beyond the Hunt, Episode 2, a series where we talk about all things Wild Hunt Festival. That is the upcoming Kickstarter and beyond. I'm sure that we'll get to some questions later on. If you have any while you're watching, please make sure to drop them in the live chat. We have pretty much all avenues open, so wherever you type it, we will see it. And yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about some cool stuff. We've got pre-production assets in my hands that I'm going to be able to get to show you some of here and there. We've got some other neat things to talk about. I think we are going to take a little bit more of a focus on the characters that will be coming in the new content, which is very exciting. And yeah, Fern, where shall we go first?
Yeah. So let's see. I guess let's talk first about our role in Wild Hunt Festival as a whole and Ramo's role in moving forward. So, oh, I should move this over so I'm not staring off in the distance. So, as you might know, Wild Hunt Festival was a game originally designed by Ramo and Team Liner Note over in, I believe, China, Japan. They kind of go throughout both. Um, and we had or not we, but Linewing Publishing had the opportunity to localize that game for the US audience, and now we're localizing the expansion. However, Ramo's taking more of a hands-off approach to a lot of Wild Hunt Festival content moving forward, as he's moving to making more Cradia games. I think he was talking about a new one that was multiplayer, kind of. I forget what it was, but it was a non-cooperative game, which was interesting. So he's working on that, and we wanted to keep doing Wild Hunt Festival. So for the most part, we'll find Wild Hunt Studios producing a lot of content for Wild Hunt Festival with his approval, but off to the side. So we want to assure you that we strive to maintain his vision of the game and don't plan on modifying any of the core philosophies of the game or forgetting the original content that brought us here. So all future content for Wild Hunt Festival will be compatible with the original game and everything moving forward, no matter what it looks like. And additionally, if Ramo ever comes back and makes anything Wild Hunt Festival, we'll be sure to localize it for you all.
Perfect. I think we mentioned a little bit on the last episode that if he introduces new characters in the in any new entries to the universe, we're hoping that maybe we can backport those in a Wild Hunt Festival and maybe get a taste of what those other games are like, back in the universe here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So next up after that, did you want to go through that doc that we had
Sure.
of questions that we had received in between?
Oh yeah.
Let's see if I can
Questions
find
since
it.
last time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So we had a question. I forgot to write down who wrote this question. As boring as it sounds, I would love to hear about the packaging, the box, and insert. They had built a custom insert for the first Cradia, so they're curious as to the new one.
Oh, hold on. While you go ahead and answer that question, I will break out my old insert. If you are the one who made the one and uploaded it to Thingiverse, thank you. I do have that insert printed and inside my box, and it was very well made. So thank you for your contribution. Here you are. I don't know if. Yeah.
Yeah, that insert was really nice.
Lovely little guy.
So, in terms of the box, I believe we have landed on an, oh gosh, was it A4 size box? Bigger than
Yes.
an A5. Yeah, so one step over an A5 box. Which is actually the original dimensions of the first box. It'll just be a little bit deeper so that more content can fit in it. As we've learned, if you've opened up the original Wild Hunt Festival, the space that's allotted in that like pre-printed insert is A5 size. So we know that the characters and bosses that are at that new size will fit comfortably within that box. We just need to make sure there's enough space vertically for that to happen. So we're going to make sure that the boxes are in that size. In terms of inserts, we're looking into constructing an insert potentially for that. We're not sure yet. And packaging, pretty much we're going to try to limit things to boxes. The exception of the slipcase for an Aria of Light and Shadow, although that might end up packaged in a box too. So more news about that down the future, but for the most part, we will be having a focus on that A4 box, and if you want to build a new insert for that, we'll give you the depth of the box so that you can do that, and the
Yeah.
dimensions of the cards individually, which I think we've talked about before, but we'll talk about that later down the line when we show you the actual cards.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. What was next on there?
Maybe, if possible, show how to integrate the side stories or anything else is added into the main game. Maybe more into components, since the last ones were small. Tell us how the stories came to be and the path it took.
Okay. Well, at the very least, I can get you started. Mixing and matching new content with old content is going to always and forever be just as easy as taking the content and putting it on the table. Fern and I, as we've said before, are very committed to making sure that any new content that gets added to the game is going to be mix and matchable with content that has been released previously. It's something very important to us. And as the Wild Hunt Festival grows as the Wild Hunt Festival universe grows and changes, it's important to us to be able to take whatever you want from wherever you want and slot it back in.
Yeah.
if you want to take that from there
Yeah.
on some of the other.
Sure. So in terms of components, I know we'll talk about this further down the line, but all cards will be standard size, which is the 63 by 88 millimeters. That is the standard poker size and standard Magic the Gathering size. It is not Yu-Gi-Oh size. Just let you know that. Uh, all character boards, boss boards, and other boards will be A5. That is moving them up a size. Um, so they'll be slightly larger. And I believe we're going to be making their paper itself thicker to accommodate for that. We'll likely be keeping the stun and evade tokens the same size and the Pumu token. And the small little plastic doohickeys that everyone hates, those will probably be going away and being replaced with a different plastic token that is easier to manipulate and larger in size. So we're still figuring out exactly how big that's going to be because there's a limit into how big it can be, and too small makes it just as annoying as the other ones. So we're still working on that, but it is going to be bigger than how it was originally. And then I guess we can talk about side stories. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So side stories is, well, what was the original question? I'm sorry.
Oh, how side stories came to be and the path that it took.
Yes. Okay. So, side stories is, oh man, digging back through the memory banks here. So side stories has kind of evolved into this, dare I say, like blister pack content that will be coming to Wild Hunt Festival. Side stories originally began as Fern and I creating multiple different expansions, and we just had to kind of find a way to make sure that it fit into the original universe of Wild Hunt Festival without mucking about in the lore. So, side stories overall, from like a presentation perspective, is side content that is created within the Wild Hunt Festival universe, but without actually mucking with any of the lore from the original title. So obviously, like, for example, just to give you a little sneak peek into what's coming with Aria of Light and Shadow, the two characters that are coming in that expansion, Rui and Haruno, you'll be able to see that they have spent time in the Kradia universe, but won't be necessarily, like, how do I say, doing anything major, like, I don't know, eliminating a character from the original universe, or doing anything that would, like, catastrophically change the perspective and, like, guidelines that Ramo has put before us. So that is just kind of like a one-off there. But side stories itself is a way for us to create Wild Hunt Festival content, and just kind of like incorporate a story that we want to tell or something that we want to explore personally, but that maybe doesn't have enough like depth to become its own fully fledged expansion.
No. So another way to put it is that side stories is a self-contained set of characters and themings that realistically could appear in the Kradia world, and they will officially when side stories gets released. The idea is that they don't interfere with the established lore pretty much at all. I know one of the ones we like to throw out is for Rights of Nature, which got incorporated into Donkai Surrey Brigade, is that these are characters who live in a forest. I'm sure Kradia has a forest, right? So
some uninhabited forest somewhere. Rambo's gotta let that one work.
Right. So a lot of it's going to be stuff like that where we say, all right, so these characters do this thing, or these characters take part in this kind of thing, and it's something that kind of exists in every traditional fantasy setting, theoretically. So we're just going to be able to incorporate that with minimal interference with the established Kradia lore.
Exactly.
It's also a way for us to nicely package content into 2 or 3 to 4 characters and a series of bosses, as opposed to just having a whole bunch of stuff and saying go.
Exactly. And you know, that will help us with the original like tone shift of how Kradia will be presented. I'm going to keep saying it. I told you, first episode. On the way Wild Hunt Festival is going to be presented going forwards. So, right, we have this big this big Chronicles core box coming out here soon, and after that, we'll be able to release small content individually through these side stories packets before you see the next big drop in, what, 2 years or whatever that may be in time's time.
Hmm. There's one more thing that I want to talk about in terms of side stories and what you can expect down the future for it, is that even though these are self-contained stories, we would like to tell some sort of overarching story in addition with our work on Wild Hunt Festival. And so one of the things you'll notice from the newest side stories that's getting incorporated into Donkai Server Brigade, Rights of Nature, is that the characters from that expansion belong to a different faction. So all the characters in the original release and the two characters you're getting on Ramo's side in Donkai Server Brigade are Pirelli adventurers. And the three that we're getting from Rights of Nature that are being added into Donkai Server Brigade, those are from a faction we like to call the Fabled Tellers. Now, we haven't talked much about the Fabled Tellers, mainly because this is going to be their debut. But the idea is that we can now set the stage for people that are not adventurers, or at least Pirelli adventurers, but who still serve some sort of purpose in the story of Wild Hunt Festival and the Karate universe.
Perfect. Yeah, that is a pretty much on the dot.
Yeah.
I couldn't ask for a better explanation.
All right. We had another question, which was about the shipping to countries outside of the U.S.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the last thing Bradley said was.
Yeah. So there's issues, or there's ideas back and forth about this. So Wild Hunt Festival is not part of Line Wing's distribution deal with Amazon, so they won't be distributing uh, this release, which means that you won't be able to find it on Amazon, and you won't be able to get that Amazon shipping from there. So unfortunately, we're kind of stuck with the Lion Wing shipping costs if you're purchasing Wild Hunt Festival from outside the U.S. Um, the alternative to that would be getting distribution facilities or contracts with distribution facilities in those countries, and the cost to benefit ratio on that might be a little bit iffy. So it's something we have in our minds now that people have brought it up a lot, but I am not sure if we can guarantee anything's going to be done in that case, just because getting those contracts is going to also be expensive, and shipping distribution, we have to ship into the US and into our distribution facility, and then they ship from there, and that's why shipping to other countries like the UK is so expensive, because it has to cross over the UK and back, and there's not really a better way to do it because the uh, printer will not be distributing the product.
Right, right. So, yeah, an evolving story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess on the topic of that, I'll snipe one question out of the way that I'm sure is on plenty of people's minds, and they've been asking all over the board game space. Is there going to be a factor with tariffs? Now, this is something that I have been keeping a very close personal eye on as well. And Bradley dropped a little truth in the stage there chat. So he said, is there going to be any big factor in anything made or shipped pricing wise with the tariffs? Bradley has said just now in the chat, yes, we had to raise the price. It was asked to clarify, and Bradley said about 15%. I will say that we've gone through a lot of discussions with him on what's going to happen in terms of the product itself, and the freight costs are definitely something that is, first and foremost on his mind. So we will, of course, keep you updated as things evolve and change. But please remember that this product will probably not be delivered for a good handful of months. So we are quite a ways away from even having to worry about something like this in the short term,
Right.
I will say. And that is where I will leave that.
Yeah, but as for now, we have looked at raising the price slightly to match with that, and that's unfortunately there's no other option.
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
on to more exciting things.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in that doc, right?
slightly, but we'll get to it later. I saw there were more questions on Discord.
Sure, we
Yeah.
will jump in there right now because they're kind of relevant to what we were talking about.
Yep.
Um, First, I'll do the bottom one first. So, with stories, is there going to be a book added to read before the packs, and have one leading through the packs to read along, kind of like we did with the quest log in the original release?
Yeah.
Is what I have to assume is the question there.
So that's a great question. Um, and that is something that Jake and I have talked about quite a bit, I think, is Wild and Festival is very much a game, and when you play it, like you have characters and things like that, but you're not really too far worried about story. And we want to keep that kind of the same in that when you're playing the game, you don't want to get bogged down with story, but if you want to do story, we also want to have that option for you because if you're invested in the characters and you're invested in the lore and the theming of the world, then we wanted to give you that kind of uh, interaction. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't have to do with the game. So there's a couple of outs for that. The first is Donkai Server Brigade. So Donkai Server Brigade is a narrative-focused game mode. And I think we'll talk more about that down the future. But there is a
Hmm.
book in Donkai Server Brigade that you can read through. It kind of looks like a choose your own adventure book. Uh, it'll make more sense when you unbox it and you see the actual rules of the game. You're visiting these places and reading story elements kind of at random. It's more like a roguelike story setting. And there is a lot of lore in there. And so it's a great read. And it helps you understand kind of what Rama was going through with the expansion. And there's a lot of lore in there. What we wanted to do is when we're not doing something quite as big as Donkey Server Brigade, is still provide lore for you. And that's probably most seen in the way that we're going to be approaching an Aria of Light and Shadow. So it's just going to be a story mode and two characters. And while we believe there's a lot of lore involved with that, and if you've played the original game, you'll notice the little quest booklet had some entries and some story for the story mode, and I bet 90% of people didn't read any of it and just played against the bosses. We want to provide that storybook for you if you want to read that. But we also want to provide a lot of context in that story because we crafted this story with these boss fights, and we feel that there's a lot of words on paper that you could read that maybe don't interact with the game itself, but tell this story in a meaningful way. And we wanted to provide you that without putting it in the box. So our plan is to digitally distribute kind of snippets, sometimes maybe little blogs, sometimes maybe an entire chapter of word content here and there, starting with Aria Light and Shadow, and maybe moving down into the future of just lore and character things that you can read along with, and we'll follow this through line that we have planned throughout all the content we're planning on releasing that kind of tells the story of these new characters we're adding in and the world as it evolves without having you to purchase something that it essentially is non-game relevant. So we want to provide to you a way to have all these game relevant things and to buy only those things so that you don't have to raise the price of the game itself for these sort of fluff pieces, but still have that fluff in an accessible manner. And so, yes, there will be stories. I don't know if it's going to be a book. I think the plan is to distribute free blog content essentially for you to read through and talk about, especially Rui and Haruno, because that's the first thing we have planned for that. Uh, so that you can go through all this and not have to pay an extra bunch to have the content written down and in your game that you're not going to use for the game playing the game.
Definitely. I think what's worth adding on to that is because this is kind of like a experimental phase and kind of some things that we're like talking about and going back and forth about. It's also worth mentioning that on the back of those relic cards in Donkai is also the textual like in-world descriptions of what these things are and what they do and stuff about them, which could be worth doing for the new items
Mm,
that we're adding in Aria of Light. So that's just a little, something we can play around with.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there's another question in there. is there going to be any add-on items like last time, dice tray, special dice, etc.? I know figures and acrylics aren't going to be a thing. Figures and acrylics are not going to be a thing as that last time.
Yes. So going to
Yeah,
confirm, figures and acrylics not happening. That is essentially adding cost and weight to a box that is not game relevant. And while I think they're nice, I don't know if that's what we're planning on doing for this release, especially with the price hike that we just had to go through. So
However, I do believe we confirmed a dice tray, if I'm not mistaken. Am I misremembering that?
I don't remember the dice tray. We I don't know if we talked about dice tray.
Maybe I'll
There
I'll,
might be a
I'll
dice tray.
ping Bradley and we'll see we'll see what he says.
Yeah, in terms of add-on content, we are trying to get add-on content to not be add-on and to be packaged into the Chronicles box. So the big box
Yes.
that has all of the materials, all the game elements that you're gonna find in this release, is going to have a lot of what you would consider add-on content already packaged in, and that was a way to provide that deluxe edition content without more overhead, because more products, more SKUs, more things we have to deal with. The pricier it is to ship, and with the current weird economic situation, consolidating those things is better on our side. And it also means we don't have to charge you for like 3 different things, because you're just getting it all at once. And that does bring us to one of the cool things we have to show you, which is something that we could consider add-on content that is going to be base edition for all the releases that we're doing here, which is a change to the battlefield cards.
Yes. So if you want me to swap over the camera
Yeah,
and
go ahead and
we can
swap
show the
over.
people. All right. So I would like to introduce to you guys something that we worked very hard on, and special shout outs to my girlfriend across the room who helped 3D print this absolute monstrosity to help better the game of Wild Hunt Festival. So, without further ado, please feast your eyes upon this, the Battlefield die. So, those of you that have played the original game remember that this, the Battlefield. Hold on, I'm just gonna get the Battlefield card out. Where is it? Hold on. Technical fumblings. Two
One
seconds.
second as we acquire some materials.
As I acquire the material I didn't think I was gonna bring out. But I started talking about it, and now I gotta do it. Okay, there it is. So, as you remember from the original game, the battlefield phase was a required start of turn action where you would flip one of 3 cards. Hold on, I'll just. There they are. Great. So, those of you that have played the original game remember that the battlefield phase is determined at the start of a round by flipping over one of 3 cards and determining where the battlefield would go to provide a random support effect or negative effect to the entire game space. Now, one of the things that Fern and I talked extensively about when we were trying to figure out what would help improve the game is this idea that when you're playing solo, it's incredibly hard to okay, let's say I flipped star like I did just now, right? And then I've got to take the 2 remaining cards on the next turn and flip them upside down and put them under the table and maybe forget that I'm playing a board game and just flip them around until I can't remember what I'm doing anymore, and then pull them back out, flip one over, and I accidentally counted, in my head, and I knew that was going to be sun all along, and it was just impossible to, it's just impossible to get a battlefield phase where you didn't have to, forget that you were doing something in order to randomize, quote unquote, the cards. So, what the battlefield die does, long story short, is you would take this thing and you'd roll it. And I rolled star. So great, I would take my, hold on, get a get a die out here real fast. I'd take my battlefield marker and I'd say, great, it's on star. Now charge attacks cannot be activated on threes this round. So, on the next round, I'd take the die again and I'd roll it. Great. Sun, we're going to sun. But here's the cool thing. Because it's a die, you have a likelihood to roll. I'm like talking and disappearing into the background off and on again. Whatever. Anyway, because it's a die, there is a probability that you'll roll star again. Now, to mitigate that, because it's 3 different symbols and there are 6 sides on a die, I think the smart of you can realize that on the other side of this star is a moon. So if you roll the same symbol that you're already on again, you simply flip the die over, and now you found your path on the battlefield phase. Yes, you do see sleeved cards. I have the entire original game, card library sleeved. I'm a madman, I can't help it. It was important for me to protect the game. So, yeah. I will get to your question in a moment, but long story short, the battlefield die helps add this element of not only randomness to reduce the weird clunkiness of playing solo with the battlefield cards, as well as making it a little bit more fun to actually, do the battlefield phase, because now you're looking forward to rolling a die every time. This is, of course, a 3D printed prototype. Fern, if you wanted to flash up on the screen right now some of the renders that we've gotten
let me just
done for
button.
This. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ramo has expressed extreme interest in keeping it to this kind of look, which is really cool. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be going with the wood that this looks like it's made out of. I promise it's plastic. Because that would be a little insane. But hey, who knows?
Yeah. We have some renders. Not sure whether what is going to be the final product at this point, but the idea and the sides are set in stone. And they are, by the way, mathematically perfect, so don't worry about that.
Yes. Leave the die off to the side here, and we'll do a little fun spreading of some assets into the background so that there's more to look at here when I come back. All right. Anyway, I think that is it for the second there, unless you wanted to go straight into the other stuff.
We had questions, right? Or another question?
Yes, there is another question asked about space in the box for sleeved, and got the story about Bradley. What made you do the change and idea behind the battlefield die? Yeah, Fern, if you wanted to take that one away, I think there's probably a little bit worth mentioning about size in the box too.
Right. So I guess let's start talking about sleeve cards. So part of our change in changing all of the smaller cards is making sleeving those cards easier. As we said, we were upgrading the card size to your standard 63 by 88, which means that any old card sleeve essentially will sleeve those cards. And I recommend double-side clear for a lot of them, especially for skill cards, because they are double-sided. But you can use whatever you want, and it'll most likely be fine.
Just gonna drop a couple item cards for display without spoiling anything from the new stuff.
Upgraded card sizes.
Boom. So you'll notice here that these are poker sized. I'll flip one over. You see the item background. UI is expanded just a little bit. Very cool. Let me get a bicycle trading card out. Trading card. What is wrong with me?
In terms of how those sleeve cards fit into the box, as the box is going to be a 4 size, we don't believe there's going to be any issues with them fitting in the box, sleeved or unsleeved. If we're building a insert for the box that is supposed to house those cards, we will try our best to keep sleeved cards in mind, because we're fans of sleeving cards. We know Bradley isn't, but especially now that we've got this more universal card size, people are going to want to sleeve their cards, and if they do, we want to make sure the insert works with that.
Yeah. The one thing, of course, cards that are not these, like the player boards and the boss boards and the board boards, as I'm going to call them right now. Those, I mean, I don't know. Is there like a card sleeve for those? I don't think
For
there
A5
is, but you
size,
may know more than me.
maybe
Yeah.
not. Those are we're approaching really big cards at that point, and we're planning on using much thicker paper for that. So it's unlikely that you'll need to sleeve them, especially since you're not going to be shuffling those cards or manipulating them too
Exactly.
much in any manner. If you still want to sleeve those cards, you might be able to. I have no idea. You might be able to just laminate them at that point. Uh, we don't
Sheesh.
exactly have plans for the boards. They're going to be big.
Yes, they are going to big, and you will get to see a few of those in a few minutes here. I just figured I wanted to drop those onto the scene so that you could get an idea of what you're looking for. So that's really cool. Okay. Um, and yeah. So, what made us do the change slash what was the idea behind the battlefield die?
Yeah, I think you talked about that earlier, but let me just reiterate. Uh, so the oh, you just switched over. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no
Oh, did
worries.
you want here?
No,
I'll
no,
go. I'll go back and we'll
okay.
do.
We fumbling.
We'll
All
put
right.
the.
So, uh, especially when you're resetting the battlefield. So the first flip is usually fine because you're playing 3 card money, you're shuffling 3 cards, and then you're revealing one of them, and pretty much everyone's okay with doing that. But when you're reaching the end of the board, and say you reset back to Moon, you leave the Moon card up, and you take the other 2 cards, you flip them, you shuffle them, and then you reveal one randomly. And I have a problem with one, shuffling 2 cards, and two, the amount of times I've been manipulating these cards, I didn't have them sleeved. My cards look real bad. There's a whole lot of wear on them. And my
Yikes.
solution to shuffling the cards was taking one of the cards that wasn't revealed and flipping it like a coin. Uh,
That's
so
good.
it was a way to randomize it without shuffling 2 cards face down. Especially if you're playing by yourself, shuffling 2 cards face down is kind of doing nothing. So it was a problem. And so
Mathematically decided card flipping based on the amount of air friction in the room.
I don't know. Yeah, flipping the card was whatever end up was the only solution I came up that was loosely elegant. Uh, so with that being said, I looked for a solution. I was like, okay, I don't want to shuffle 2 cards. This seems like an issue. What if we could roll a die? And I realized, well, there are 3 options, 6 sides on a die, and then you have this problem of what if you roll it again? And we came up with the pairwise distribution that allows us to just flip the die over. So you'll notice there are 2 moon faces. One of them has an opposite that is star, and one of them has an opposite that is sun. So no matter what you're doing, you're turning a roll of a die into either a 1 and 3 or a 1 and 2. And it is functionally the exact same as doing whatever all this stuff was with the battlefield without having to shuffle 2 cards face down. Uh, and if you've ever shuffled 2 cards face down, you'll know how much why I hate it. So that was
So
mainly the
yeah,
reason why we decided to change the battlefield cards, is because shuffling 2 cards face down sounds like a stupid proposition. And while I love the idea of revealing tarot cards and having 3 cards to decide like the future of the battlefield in that tarot style, and I think it's awesome, and I do feel like it's sad that we're losing that by moving into the battlefield die. Functionally, the battlefield die solves a lot of problems in the battlefield phase, and also removes the waiting period of shuffling for 2 cards face down.
exactly. And that's another really cool thing too. I think both playing in solo and playing with a lot of friends is really great. Eliminating the wait for this phase to kind of like slow down gameplay rather than like waiting for your friends to decide what they're gonna do is definitely a better change in the long run.
Especially because this phase has essentially zero agency in terms of player action. The only one I can think of is Top Moon, which is just decide which mana you get, and that's it.
Right.
So, moving to, oh, this is what the battlefield is now, instead of waiting for, oh, let me shuffle these cards, pick one, which feels like an action, but really isn't. Right? It's not a sense of choice
Yeah.
because it is just randomizing. And then going, all right, this is what the battlefield is. We're removing those steps to just say, roll the die. If it's this, flip it over, you're done.
Exactly. And it also helps to remember. I have definitely played games before where I realized like halfway through the final like quarter of the boss's health, forgot the battlefield phase like 3 turns in a row.
Yeah.
So, it voids my game, and this will help me remember roll the die, roll the die, roll the die.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So I will move these off to the outskirts of
Do you have the bigger
the
battlefield
camera
board, by
here.
the way? Or did we not print that?
I sure do. I sure do. One moment while I grab that because I only brought the characters over. Okay, thankfully it's the one on top. So that's cool. Boom. Look at that size comparison.
So,
That is the new battlefield board with old overlaid for comparison. Nice.
so that is the size up that every board card will be going through. Uh,
Yes.
Hopefully, it allow you to see across the table and see actually what's going on. I know I have a friend who takes a picture of the boss on their phone so they can see what their attacks are and what their health is. Um, so this should help. It will take up more table space if you're playing the game solo, which means I guess my setup on my desk might need to change when I'm playing
Yep.
Claudia. But uh, overall, a much requested change and something that we're looking to do specifically in this way and keep it this way. So this size up theoretically will be the last size up we go through. I don't know if the battlefield board needs to be any bigger.
Definitely not unless we like added a phase. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Sun, Moon, Star.
Added a fourth one.
I don't know what even would happen if we did that.
Yeah. That brings us to a point we're planning on not adding or changing things in the original game like that. So like adding a fourth battlefield result, while it'd be cool to think about, that would drastically change how the game works and kind of remove compatibility with older things. We're not looking to do that because that would essentially make irrelevant the original release, the original content, and we want to make sure that all of that stuff you can just bring into anything new we're bringing in and play with immediately.
Exactly. Now I'm also reaching down here because we can talk about one of the other things that we're introducing. And that is something we'll get into shortly. Okay. Shall we maybe talk about the characters now? You know, the thing that we advertised from the
Yeah,
beginning?
let's look at characters.
All right. Great. So, first things first, anybody who's live in the chat here, do you have any requests on who you'd like to see? In the meantime, I will show you the new UI for Erase, or Erase. I pronounce his name wrong all the time.
No worries.
So, the reason why I show him is not just because of favoritism or anything. I think it's also worth mentioning that Ramo has made some slight buffs. Now, I know we talked about this previously, or I don't know if we talked about this in the
Loosely.
last episode. Loosely. Ramo has made some very, very minor adjustments to the base cast, Erase being one of the more important ones. Please take a look. Well, first of all, let's talk about what we're actually here to talk about. Size of a card. There's your upgraded size there from original to the new one. Moving the full-size art from the back to the front of the card. Very nice, very nice.
I believe the full
Still
size
keeping
art's
the
still on
back of the
back,
card intact, which is gorgeous. Seeing it so nice and scaled up like that is awesome. I will get Arase's upgraded skill card so that you can see what I'm talking about. Because I do want to make mention of these because it's important to me. Okay. So, like we mentioned before, the upgraded cards, just like the original game, have to flip them over to get the other side. Very nice. You'll notice, though, that Arase's meditation at level 3 heals him now for 4 instead of 2.
If you can read it, I don't know
Where
if it's too
is...
blurry or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's legible. I will pull it closer to the camera. There you are. Okay. On the original card, there we go. On the original card, his meditation heals for 2, and that, remember, these cards are applied at level 3. The new buffed version heals him for 4, making this an extremely worthwhile skill to use. And now you may be saying, Jake, what the heck? What is even the point of this? I'd like to point you to the other buff that was made in the upgraded version of the game. That is Monad. If you played the original, you probably were like, hey, what the heck is going on here? Monad's level 3 original skill. Pack. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Monad's level 3 skill, not Soothing Salve. I think Soothing Salve is good. Fate's Helping Hand in the original reads, draw 1 item, immediately activate it, and then shuffle it back into the deck. This is something that Fern and I talked about for a long time, and we're like, how would we make this any good? Ramo went ahead, and I'm not even sure if he looked at what we had said and made the change.
I don't think so.
I don't think...
I think he heard from players in China and Japan that had similar questions as to why Fate's Helping Hand was what it is.
Monad's Fate's Helping Hand now says, draw 1 item card from the deck. Incredibly buffing the usability of this skill, while, however, also reducing its flexibility on mana. Well, I guess increasing it? I don't really know what the math is on that there.
Shift.
But it's a sideways shift. Either way, new Fate's Helping Hand is absolutely viable now. For those of you that were interested in keeping Monad in your party, not just as a heal bot, but as a way to like reincorporate items back into your game. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. And I totally am putting that right there, but that's fine. Okay.
All right. So other things.
Back to the other things.
Yeah. So on the character board, you'll notice there's a few changes to the layout, but there's also some other things that we've added on. So first up, on the top above their name, is a nice little banner that says Parawli's Adventurer Guild. So that denotes the faction that the character comes from. Underneath that is, I believe, their class. And then underneath that is their name. You've got little stars. We're still talking about stars and what that actually means. Right now, I don't think there's anything game-wise tied to their star rating. So we might change that. We're looking into it. There's a star rating for some reason on characters. You got HP on the left, mana on the right, and basic attack buff underneath. You'll notice that we have put spaces for 0 on all of those things. That means you no longer have to move the token off the board to represent 0, and I know that was a lot of a hassle. Well, that was a hassle personally for me, but it's a hassle I've heard for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the most notable changes that we wanted, especially when talking to Ramo first. I think this was like the thing that we were like, this needs to be there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm not sure. I'm sure at the same time we were like, hey, you know, we want bigger card size, so if that's going to be the case, we can probably just slap 0s on everything.
Yeah.
And it was just going to work. And as you can see here, it definitely did. It pays off.
Yeah. You've got the class still. Class is actually a relevant game element, as anyone who's played Suika will tell you. And then a little quote, which is nice because now we get to add flavor text to character cards. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just one or two lines, but it's still cool. On the right side, you've
Okay.
got charge attack card. So you'll notice the charge attack card also contains the ailment affinities. Technically speaking, the old heart attack card did have the physical ailments and not the mental ailments. The mental ailments just got shoved into there. It helps with spacing and is not really much of a problem, and it looks pretty good in my opinion. And underneath that is the skill card. So all of your auxiliary actions are going to be contained on the right side of the card rather than on the bottom left and the top right. Um, and your ailment window is going to be slightly up on the top right, but whatever. Uh, Charge attack, I think it's pretty legible. You've got all your results 1 through 6 and all the things that they're supposed to do. Skill card, of course, as you're used to, is right there. You got skill 1 and skill 2. And of course, you're going to be placing new cards on top of that. Both those cards are the standard poker size, and when you do that, hey, it lines up pretty nice and doesn't really impede with your ability to read the game. And of course, that is a staple of old Karate, and we do not want to remove that at all. So we're keeping that exactly how it is. You just put the card on top of it, and if it's sleeved, still not a problem.
Nice and easy.
Yep.
And I definitely like this too. Now that all of the ailments are on the skill card, there's also a possibility in the future that we could give some new characters like the ability to resist other things at level 4.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that are, experiencing story mode, might be able to get a little shift or a little upgrade in there if story mode is still a relevant thing, which I would like it to still be.
Yeah, I like story mode. I know it takes a long time because you got 4 fights, but like,
Is it right? There's 4 bosses. It's a long time, but
yeah, that
yeah,
is one of the
okay.
things. I guess if we talk about design space, that is one of the things that we looked into is space in the design that is not really touched. And one of those things was, hey, ailments show up on this card that gets replaced with a level 4. What if we did something with that and had a character that gained an ailment resistance when they hit level 4? And we'll see that with one of our new characters in Donkai Server Brigade.
Okay. Speaking of Dankai Survey Brigade, shall we break in one of the new characters?
Yeah.
All right, who would you like to show? I'll leave that to you. I've got them
Let's
all
show a
right here.
Ramo character.
All right. Shall we show the new Galateo
Sure.
or Charlona? You know what? New Galateo is a real interesting fella, so I'm going to put him down. All right. Feast your eyes on a new character designed by Ramo himself. I'm going to get his skill cards and charge attack cards so that I can bring them closer to the screen and not have to hold the whole board.
So, new Galateo. This is Galateo. He's gone under a job change or class change in the events of Donkai Server Brigade, and part of the story of Donkai Server Brigade is understanding why and what he got from that class change. Still a healer, and there is no rule preventing you from playing both Galateos. Just gonna let you guys know that because that's sometimes a question, and I know some people think it's like anachronistic or whatever to play both at the same time. There's no game element stopping you from doing that, and there's no game element preventing you from only playing one at a time. So don't worry about that. Uh, yeah, he's an astrologian, however you want to play it, say it, depending on what game you're playing. uh,
All right.
yeah, we've got a new
So
healer.
yeah, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, you can finish that thought.
With some really interesting interactions with the battlefield. As you'll notice, his charge attack is slightly different. He doesn't roll a die, he does his charge attack based on the battlefield.
You take a look closely there. You'll notice that each battlefield phase has a upright and a reversed on it. We will explain what that means when I grab the skill card. Very, very cool.
No.
At first glance, this thing is like probably the most confusing character to play. He's not that bad overall. Uh, but yeah, okay. So to explain what those upright and reversed means, we've got his first skill, which is a passive called Astral Revelation. Based on where you are in the turn order, you become either upright or reversed for this turn. Upright means you're the first starting player or second, and reversed means you're the third or fourth player.
And then
So,
everything
I'll
else,
let that sink in.
yeah, everything else that he does functions off of that, which is interesting because this is the first character who essentially has a blank skill 1 that is super relevant to all of their other abilities.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and we'd love to have y'all explore that, and we might actually do that. I think Jake and I were planning on doing uh, a actual play of the game
Yes.
with these new characters, and maybe even with Donkai Server Brigade's rule set, um, so that y'all could see what's going on first before you get your hands on the content. If you'd like to do that, if not, that's also fine. Um, we don't want to give off too many things, but New Galateo was definitely something that piqued our interest at first when we saw this, and even though we've seen him a lot, then we still don't know exactly how he works. So it's
He's
going to be an
um
interesting time learning how to play him.
yeah, he's one of those characters where it's like if you're really interested in planning your moves on your turn like 6 turns in advance, this is the guy to look at. Um I don't know of a better way to explain, and it's so like not my play style, but I think that if I'm not playing solo, I would definitely play him. But if I'm playing solo and managing 3 other characters at the exact same time, I can't my brain is not big enough to like manage his turn economy. So yeah, very cool.
Yep.
I guess if we're showing the Ramo cards, let's definitely check out Charlona, the other character that you will be seeing joining Galateo in the fray here.
Yeah, let's do a quick one of this
Boom.
one so they don't get too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go quick. We'll go quick here. All right. So, real quick, Charlona. This is another Ramo created character. She's the other counterpart to the 2 characters that come in Donkai Survey Brigade. She's really neat. She has an extra card that allows her to build up these. Hold on.
Elemental charges, I think, is what they're called.
Yeah, there it is. She has an extra card that she summons called Magic Sword Aurora when you use her first ability. I'll just give you a quick little once over here. And
Got a lot of
basically,
text.
as you. Yeah, a lot of text, really easy explanation. Every time you use Elemental Sword or roll this little fencer symbol on the charge attack, depending upon the health of the boss when the damage applies, you charge one of these 4 elements, and she has skills that allow you to spend them.
Yep.
Very neat, very interesting. I love the concept, and it feels pretty good in play.
She's called a magic fencer. She's more like an elemental sword, spell sword kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. By far easier than Galateo, although still a little complicated.
Definitely.
But once you get used to using her extra card, it's actually very easy.
Okay.
A really fun attacker.
And who of ours do you want to show off?
I don't know. I like them all. Which one do you want to show off?
Well, I think the one with the most mechanical change might be the most interesting.
Sure.
Myra?
Okay, yeah. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, here is one of our 3 characters. Her name is Myra. She is a attacker, and she definitely flips the game, not entirely on its head, but the way you look at ailments will forever be changed. You'll notice here that she's got these little arrows that point from the mental ailments up to the physical. And while I get her skill card out, I will allow Fern to kind of deep dive on why this character is so cool, because
Yeah.
I know that it is
So you'll notice
his
on the top
creation.
left is the Fable Teller banner. It's green instead of red for the Prawley Guild. Uh, just a little thing, and something that we'll probably talk about later in the future. But factions. So uh, definitely not one of your standard Prawley Adventurers Guild characters. Also, there's a little thing for extra cards now to tell you what extra card are linked to each character, and yeah. By the way, Charge Attack cards, I don't know if we saw that, but they have the name of the character on the top on the front side, so you don't have to flip it over to figure out who it is. Skill cards as well, you don't have to memorize all the skills in order to find out which card goes to who. That's another thing that we have to
Me,
look at.
I have every single skill one to every character memorized.
Yeah.
I had to. There was no way to know.
So Myra is a really interesting risk-reward attacker. She's really good at doing a bunch of damage and or providing protection for herself and the team, but not both at the same time sometimes, depending on how you play out your turn. Uh, the primary reason why she has no elemental resistances is because any mental ailment she gets just immediately shifts up into a physical one. And I think we explained that with lore, but the important point about that is that if you have space for the physical ailment, you just can't get that mental ailment, you get the physical one instead. And it plays into her character. She gets ailments by herself, and she expunges physical ailments to deal damage. So she plays with the ailments a lot, and the idea is you want to push how many ailments you can take, what they'll do to you, and then use them for beneficial effects, like, hey, I'm going to get a bunch of basic attack buff, or I'm going to do a bunch of damage, or I'm going to heal, or I'm going to remove elemental elements from everyone else, because she does have that too. She's got a lot of interesting utility, but all of that utility comes at a very relevant cost, which is ailments.
A lot of physical ailments. So really, really unique character. If you're interested in, a lot of these bosses, some of the bosses in the game don't apply a lot of like mixed physical ailments, but for the ones that apply like one physical and one mental, it's a really great way to kind of like, hey, I see your mental ailment. How about no? And also I'm going to do even more damage because you don't apply that physical one. So there's no way the mental's ever going to stick.
Yep. So yeah.
Really,
really interesting
really cool
character. By far one of my favorites mechanically, just because of the amount of play she gives, the amount of agency she gives to the player when playing that character. You can either not interact with elements and just have this kind of like mental ailment shield, or you could play aggressive and go hard, go in fast, and do a bunch of damage. But it's always a question of like, how do I balance it, and what am I doing? And I don't want to get trapped in a corner with all ailments and cry.
All right. Now, I got to show my boy real fast. Yeah. I'm not going to go through all of his skills. I'm just going to talk about his overview, and I'll give the people a little sneak preview, and that's what we're doing. All right. So, this is Kemuri. He's super cool. I love his design. He was designed with intent after Kevin from Seiken Densetsu 3 or Trials of Mana, for those of you that have played. Thank you. And I just want to give you a quick overview of what he does. So, Kemuri is a shapeshifter here. Hold on, I'll show you. I said I was going to be quick, but I'm not going to be too quick with it either.
Yeah, his class is
Fabled Tellers. He is a shapeshifter, so he is a special type unit. And what he does is with his first ability, he can shapeshift into one of two forms, either into tiger form or bear form. And in doing so, he gains himself some unique passives and also two different unique abilities.
Yeah.
So here we are. By using his skill 1, you either take on bear form, which gains you sleep resistance and -1 damage from all sources. It also gives you, because he is a specialist and he's turning himself into a defender this way, we had to give him some kind of taunt, which is cool. Or you can turn into tiger form, which is a little bit more damage focused. Whenever you take damage, you can do 1 damage back to the boss. It is not considered damage. He also gets blind resist, and he has an extra ability that is just 1 red, which deals 3 damage to the boss, and deals one back to you, which of course will proc your passive again.
Yep. So, part of our thinking about Kamuri is, first of all, Kamuri is, I think, the only Hucronus in this expansion, which is interesting. And
Yes.
we do like Hucronus. Like, Hucronus, as a race and as a concept is really cool. And we actually went into the lore a little bit with Hucronus for Kamuri, because he exhibits animal traits from two animals, which technically is not a thing that Hucronus actually do, and is probably the reason for his shapeshifting abilities. So lore-wise, we decided to do some really interesting things with Kamuri. Gameplay-wise, we also decided to mix things up. So Kamuri is a specialist through and through. Specialist because specialists kind of alter some aspect of the game, or do something that's not really done by any other class, but is still useful. And so we have, firstly, a modal extra card, a double-sided extra card, which doesn't exist. We have an extra card that provides resistances, which doesn't exist yet until now, and then passive effects, which technically already existed with things like Luca's extra card. But the other
Right.
thing,
Speaking of which, we do have that too.
Luca's
I'm
extra
going to
card was
grab
also
that just to
changed.
show it off.
Yeah. The other thing that it
We'll
does
get to that.
is the extra card grants a skill, which I don't think was a thing before, and wasn't
No.
really on our list of, hey, this would be a nice thing to put on a card, until we thought of it, and it's like, oh yeah, skills could be anywhere, right? Even on an extra card. As long as they're
With the way that the new extra cards are, there is plenty of room for that kind of text here too.
yeah. So you might find skills not on a skill card, but they are still skills, and that is what Kamuri kind of like opens the box on. For, hey, I have access to these new skills as long as I'm transformed. And of course, once you hit 0, you're no longer transformed. You can't use the skill. But as long as you have that kind of transformation, you have access to this brand new skill. And while specialist, of course, the shapeshift is the idea to turn Kamuri into a defender or attacker, and everything about that is to support going modal in that case. So really nice character. For a defender, probably the lowest HP you'll ever see. Technically higher HP than Luca. But there's reasons for that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So and then there's another like sub layer to like playing him where you have to like manage your like the duration that you exist in these forms and stuff like that. But again, don't want to talk about it too much. Just gonna leave that how it is. Mm-hmm. All right. So I did want to make mention of Luca's extra card because we talked about that a second ago. Yeah. This is another one of those ones that needed to be changed from the original game because of the way that it was written wasn't being interpreted correctly at most tables.
Actually, it was just written incorrectly.
Oh, was it just straight up written wrong?
Yes.
I thought it was up to interpretation. Hold on,
that was Lemugia EX, if you want to bring out that card.
Oh, yeah, I have her too.
So if anyone's played Luca, you're always confused about Clockwork Knight, and I was too. I'm actually a Luca main, and I never use Clockwork Knight. So Clockwork Knight said, like, you get 2 of it, and then at the end of the round, it minuses 1, and it prevents damage based on the amount of Clockwork Knights. Turns out, and Ramo confirmed this to us, it doesn't always remove 1 Clockwork Knight at the end of the round. It's only supposed to be at the end of the rounds that Clockwork Knight has absorbed damage.
Right.
So you don't just proc the Clockwork Knights and then hope that you get attacked, and if you don't in those 2, you lose it. It's the next time you take damage, you reduce that damage, or technically you reduce that damage for all the time, and then at the end of the round, if it tried to reduce damage, technically speaking, it cannot reduce damage because of the new Pierce keyword, but if it tried to reduce damage, then you lose 1 at the end of the round. Which means Clockwork Knight just got a buff. Like, it's just stronger now.
Yeah. Clockwork Knight can now actually you can stockpile them rather than having to, like, oh man, like I have to drop, 2 red mana every turn to keep these up?
Yeah.
It's totally, like, not feasible for the character.
Yeah.
So this is a excellent change. Well, clarification even.
It's a very good clarification because that is apparently not how Luca was supposed to be going. Because Clockwork Knight just felt really bad to maintain.
Yeah.
In fact, that's
I
the
mean,
reason why I play Luca, is because Clockwork Knight sucks and the other ability is good.
yeah. You can see on the original card, it just says at the end of the round, knight -1, which you would think, okay, at end of every round, -1, and I'll never be able to keep these up for longer than like a turn or two. So yeah, this new Clockwork Knight, definitely super good. And if people wanted to see Luca, we did get Luca printed as well
Yeah.
because we were making his changes, so it felt right to get him all printed up here.
We did do a really deep dive into the wording on a lot of abilities and characters, and we're actually going to do another one before this thing gets printed because you can never be too sure.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we altered the ruling, of course, with Ramo, to match what he had intended for things to be. So things like the Luca Clockwork Knights that didn't make sense, we're going to change that wording so that it fits what the core of the game was supposed to be. And the other cool thing about that shift for Luca is that Kamuri doesn't immediately eat up all that space because they also have a mechanic that reduces by duration every one. Kamuri's is intended to lose 1 duration every turn. Luca's is not.
Yes.
So now there's a
Yes.
difference.
And before that, I believe Kemmery's the what is it? The cost to go into Kemmery's duration was reduced
Yeah.
because of that factor.
Right. It's reduced. I think Kamuri's transformation is 1 cost, does not give you mana.
Yes.
Depending on the mana you spend is which form you get into, and it lasts for like 4 turns at level 4. So
Right.
it
Which is
stays
really
up a
good.
lot, but you do have to keep maintaining it, as opposed to getting
All
the
right.
use immediately out of it from Luca.
So, I would argue the most painful point from the original printing of this game is this boss right here. That is Lemugia Challenge Mode, or as we like to call her, Lemugia EX. And she has a overdrive that drove us nuts for probably the better part of like 2 years. And here's why. The translation here says, after receiving damage equal to rage meter, boss does not receive damage until the round ends. Now, knowing what I know now, this makes a lot of sense. After receiving damage equal to the rage meter, 1, 2, or 3, as you can see down there, the boss is invulnerable. So, the question was, if Lemugia is currently at 2 rage, and she takes 1 damage, and then 1 damage, that is equal to the rage meter, thus meaning 2, meaning she should be invulnerable for the rest of the round. If you deal more than 2 damage, that is equal to or more than her rage meter, therefore she should be invulnerable for the rest of the round. This is the thought process that I used to fight this boss for months on end.
Oh.
Not in the like 20 plus times I would try, I could never get her past like 11 to 15 health. It just wasn't doable. I wasn't sustaining enough too. She would just destroy me or heal infinitely or anything. So, we of course clarified that with Ramo. And the new translation on the card says this. I'm really
Jake,
bad
I
at
lost your
positioning
video.
this. Oh, you lost me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'll turn it off and back on. Thank you. Am I back?
Not yet.
Okay.
Loading. Technical difficulties.
It's okay. It's working on my side, so I'm just waiting it to go through to you.
Oh, I did get it. There we go.
Okay, awesome. So, as I was saying, for those podcast listeners, after receiving damage from a single attack equal to rage, boss ignores all further incoming damage this round.
So, this actually...
One small wording change
This actually
makes all
cleans
the
up
difference.
quite a few things. Lemugia EX apparently has all of the wording changes that we put into the game all at once in like 2 abilities.
Yes.
And the first is that we have codified damage prevention as ignores, basically to remove things like does not take damage, prevents damage, and all these other words that are being used on bosses. Because we realized there were a lot of bosses that ignore damage, and they all ignore it in a different way. So first of all, ignores damage is the thing you're going to be seeing for the most part. The second was weird ambiguities in the rules. So things like, well, is it damage total to the amount of range? Well, no, it's actually a single hit dealing that amount of exactly that amount of damage. Uh, and the third is, I think, using just for the rest of the round. We did have something to talk about turnaround consistency. That wasn't too much of a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we'll look at that
Oh,
soon.
we will get to that question
Yeah,
in
we'll
a
get to that
second.
question soon. There's a lot of text. We'll finish this thought first. The other thing is that we learned there was a slight translation interpretation thing with the boomerang card. If you
I
remember
actually
that
have that.
one.
I have that one ready already.
Yeah.
All right.
So it
So
was.
here's another lovely one.
So if you know what a pumu is, or a boom, I guess, is what it used to be called, it was a little slime thing that Lemugia like is either the queen of or is or whatever. They were called booms in the previous one, and I think that was a translation from the original word pumu to Romanized pumu, and then back to boom somehow. Um, Really weird how that ended up happening. They're supposed to be slimes, and they're supposed to look like a dessert. So that's pretty much where we ended on that, is in the original interpretation. They got renamed to boomerang because it's like, oh yeah, it's a play on the word boom. But the things aren't supposed to be booms, they're supposed to be pumus, right? Like puddings.
Yes.
So we we asked Ramo about this, and we were like, boom doesn't make sense here because like they're not explosions or anything like that. They're puddings, right? So we decided to change the word to poomerang, because like a meringue, like a treat. So we brought back pumu as the actual what they're supposed to be called, and we're just going to leave it as a Romanized interpretation because there's not really a good English version of that. And then we did
Yeah.
meringue because they're also a dessert. So
Excellent.
one of the
I think
small
there
things.
there was also confusion about this line here
Oh yes.
about enhancing versus doing a basic attack, but basic attacks also include getting an enhancement.
Yep.
Do you remember what we landed on from that? I
Yes,
believe
it
it's
is-
one or the other.
You enhance or you basic attack. Basic attack does have enhance. It is you decide to
There
either
it is.
basic attack and get a mana or just get a mana.
So that's worth referencing.
It slightly got a wording change. It still doesn't remove that slight ambiguity that you could ask about, but unfortunately there's not really that great a way to talk about it otherwise.
Yeah. Well, a basic attack, as described by the rulebook, would tell you that enhance is like an incorporated part into that. But we are always here to answer those questions.
You'll also notice
Okay.
on the Lemugia card that there's space for 0 in the range meter.
Yes, this is something I wanted to show off with other bosses too. I can grab some other Kratia 1 bosses. The 0 here, super nice so that you don't have to slide your little markers on and off the freaking boss boards. Very, very handy there. Who else do I have
We
sitting
didn't
here?
put a space for 0 on the HP, but that's just because if the boss is at 0 HP, they're dead, so we didn't really feel
Yeah,
like...
it ends. Here's another one taking a look at, actually.
Yeah.
Alaminos has another one of those weird boss skill cards. You'll notice that not only does he have a 0, but he's got probably one of the largest rage tracks in the game. And if I can flip through the cards, there it is. Call Together is his extra card. Okay. Call Together also has its rage effects changed because in the original, I believe it was like 1 through
1 through 6.
1 through 6,
Yeah.
which is 1 indexed, which is incorrect because rage 6 on this guy doesn't exist.
Well,
'cause
it
that's
does,
5.
but as soon as you hit rage 6, it goes
It
back
does,
to
but it-
0. And that was the issue.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Is that you can't have rage 6 at the end of a turn. So that effect would never go off, and it was kind of obviously supposed to be zero index because you were supposed to be able to do something at zero rage. So we just
Right.
cleaned that up. We added blue to the text to like make some things more noticeable. In the original one, that optional secondary effect, I never knew you could do that because I just didn't
Yep.
read it, and
You
the
can
text is
skip
real small.
this unique boss effect
You could
by
try to skip
actually
it,
doing
yeah.
an action.
You can take an objective action to try to remove the call together.
Best way to
So yeah,
show that the numbers are matched up.
slight things like that. Of course, everything that we're changing, we're not actually changing how it works or how it's supposed to work. We're just making it more readable or easier to figure out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Uh,
bosses being immune to damage. So not only is there a new keyword that Realm introduced called Pierce, which ignores damage ignoring effects, um, we changed the wording on who was it? Um, One of the characters that had the weirdest rules text. Oh, it was Rabbit, wasn't it? The weirdest rule
I have him in
text
my hand.
for ignoring damage, which was forgives 1/4 or 2/3 of damage, which turns
Yeah,
out is supposed to be like this, which is unfortunately wordy, but now it makes
but it
sense.
fits. Boss ignores incoming damage 1 or 4 when HP is red, 2 or 3 when HP is blue.
Yeah.
So, obviously, in tone with these, if you do a 1 or a 4 while the HP is red, that is ignored. If you do a 2 or a 3 when it's blue, that is ignored.
Yeah.
Which is
One
what the original text is supposed to say.
supposed to say. One of the most annoying things about that boss was like, what is forgives 1/4 of damage supposed to mean?
Yeah. Like, you're two-thirdsing, like, the single damage I'm doing with my attack. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So, that was a weird
It
one.
was confusing. It is no longer confusing. We'd love to go through every change on that, but just trust us on the fact that every one of those weird instances we've looked at and we've tried to devise a solution that makes more sense.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
On to
So,
the
uh,
question.
so I read this while you were talking.
Yeah.
I will restate. So the second paragraph is what needs to be read. So, with these new characters and mechanics that you've made, have you looked at future characters to add more abilities to existing ones, or do support skills like damage buff for the party, or add damage to the boss? For example, and this is the key part, World of Warcraft's Hunter's Mark, which allows everyone to do increased damage for a certain amount of time, or a heal over time, or heal when you damage the boss,
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's a multifaceted answer, I think. Do you want to head over to the other view so we can talk about this?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it. Start cleaning up here.
So that's a great question. Um, and definitely in lines of things that we're looking at exploring because this game is based off of I think technically MMORPGs with the way you gain mana by basic
Yeah,
attacking, but it's very like traditional JRPG, MMORPG. You have these things like stacks and buffs and all this stuff. Um, Karate is intended to be a simpler game. So, one of the things that we've looked at in terms of design is not adding too much overhead to the players that they didn't sign up for. So, if I'm playing a character, I want to know what that character does, but I don't necessarily want to know what this other character who provides 5 different buffs and debuffs does because I didn't sign up to play that character. That's what they're playing, and I'm not playing that. Uh, so part of that is something like a hunter's mark is harder to justify in terms of now everyone else has to remember something that you did that doesn't affect their character directly. Um, and we try to avoid that just because that provides some really annoying overhead, especially when all 4 characters are doing that and you only have agency during your turn. In an MMO, you kind of have agency all the time, and the buffs are pretty much ignorable. But in this game, every action you take individually, and its own consequences are felt individually. They don't stack up together. So things like that, not quite exactly what we're looking for things of something like I'm applying a buff to you temporarily for you to heal based on a percentage of the damage you deal. Uh, Without having a way to track that, it'd be really difficult. However, we do have some characters down the line that do some of these things in other ways. I saw something like a heal over time. We actually have a character in this release that has it, but only for themselves, uh, technically. And the way we implement that's
Yeah.
really cool, in my opinion, because their whole character, actually, all the Rights of Nature characters are based on playing with ailments, and the way that character has a heal over time is by playing with ailments. Um, so
Yeah, so actually a perfect example from what we talked about last time or earlier today is, introducing, now that we have, the cards for charge attacks and all the ailments on there. If you think a little bit critically, there's one mechanic in the game, one ailment in the game that reduces health over time. That character, at least at level 4, has the ability to regen HP over time.
mhm. Yeah. So we definitely thought about it, and we actually have characters even beyond that, further down the line, that do some of those things as well. Uh, you just might not see them in the traditional MMORPG style of now I'm applying this buff for 5 turns that does this, because unfortunately, Cardia doesn't have tracking mechanisms for something like that. And we don't want to introduce that because that provides a lot of complexity that isn't really part of the original game. In terms of adding skills to other characters, the only way we do that is by having either a global mechanic that uh, is given to those players, like, for example, evasion tokens. Evasion tokens are something that get applied to characters that they didn't sign up for sometimes. Elizabeth is the one who is the main culprit of that. But evasion is a core rule in the game, and everyone should be able to figure out what it is by looking at the rulebook. So things like that we are looking into experimenting with. Things like ailments as well, because ailments are a core part of the rulebook. Adding ailments to the rulebook is actually something we do in Donkai Server Brigade. uh,
Yes, we do.
and
However, they're not on your character sheet. You will experience those through a token mechanism,
yeah,
which makes a lot more sense for when, if we add even more stuff like that down the line.
yeah. That was also a way to have the ailments available to work with without having to change the original character boards in the case that we weren't printing them for this release. But we are, so we could have, but we don't want to go through another overhaul in the UI.
Including more ailments on the original UI just means we have to further increase the size at which the boards are.
Yeah.
And then, if you add more and more and more and more, or just don't take this one seriously, YouTube chat. If you add like a level 4 skill that you get, later on, this is totally like spitballing here. Probably not going to happen. But like if you were to get like a level 4 skill to increase every single one of these cards by another like bar worth of skills is just not feasible. So that kind of thing is like Fern said, a global mechanic, rather than something that we can retroactively add to every single character.
Right. So if you're looking for things like those mechanics from traditional MMORPGs, they will either be localized to the character you're playing, so things like an extra card, you might find those things on an extra card, or things like global mechanics that are already present in the game, like the token system, or like providing basic attack buff, which is already part of the game, right? So if we wanted to look at giving everyone a buff, that's absolutely something that's already present in the game. So we'll be working with those levers that we already have access to, rather than essentially rewriting things or adding way too much overhead to players. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm playing Urase because I want to be a bear in a tank and stuff like that, I don't want to have to worry about when does the buff downtime or the debuff uptime or whatever, right? Like,
When do I have to tell my buddy to reset his poison tick on the boss?
right.
How many rounds has it been already? It's not in front of me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So while looking at your allies and their status is always going to be part of the game, we don't want you to have to know how to play your friends' characters in order for you to do your thing correctly.
Exactly. Exactly.
So great question. Love it. We're trying not to change the game too much, especially right now, because we're just taking it over and we're trying to introduce things that already are allowed in the game and already provide interest without changing things like that.
Right. And of course, like we said already, we have plans to do things like that in the future.
Hmm.
So it's not off the table. And we do like those things because, Fern and I are both avid gamers, of course. Like we do play a lot of MMOs and other like games like that. So we are interested in getting those kinds of things into Cradia, but they have to be done the right way,
Hmm.
is the long story short.
Yeah. Uh,
All
all right.
right.
So I think that concludes Donkai Server Brigade for the most part. And unless there's questions on the YouTube, I don't have that up.
No questions from there throughout the live stream.
Cool.
We answered all the questions. Yeah.
All right.
Unless anyone else has anything in our like little wrap up here, I think we've covered everything.
So I don't know about you, but I kind of want to talk about an Aria of Light and Shadow if you have time for that.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm going to real quick and make this bigger on the stream.
Yeah, please
Just
do.
bigger front and
Show them
center.
that beautiful art.
You're not going to be able to see probably one or both of us for a second, but oh well. Uh, so
That is
this
okay.
is the new cover art by our new artist for an Aria of Light and Shadow. This is essentially the blister pack that we'll be adding into the Chronicles box and potentially as a side purchase, which might be bundled in boxes or not. Um, we were thinking about releasing this digitally. We're still going to talk about that further down the line. Um, Blister packs as a whole are what we're planning on doing, but of course, as the economy shifts, we will look at how we deliver them uh, shortly, as we know
Yeah.
more about it. Uh, so, in Aria of Light and Shadow
Uh,
is our first side stories release, and it focuses on these two characters right here, Rui and Haruno. Uh, each of these characters is designed kind of individually by one of us, and then we kind of work together to mesh their ideas together. Um, and the story I think is really cool. So it follows the tale of what I call the Anthema Melancholia, which is a series of events that, true to its name, are somewhat sad and somewhat how do I say it? Somewhat sad and somewhat emergent in the growth of these characters as adventurers in the Prawley Adventurers group. These will not be fable tellers, they'll be Prawley adventurers. They'll be living in Prawley City. And the story will focus on their becoming adventurers and what happens down the line with that. I think it's really cool. These are kind of our pocket favorites, uh, and we're really excited for you to look into them. They are both attackers. If you've looked at the character class distribution of Wild and Festival, it's almost 50% attackers, which is funny because we didn't actually make that many
that's pretty
attackers.
good.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think at first we were kind of like worried that we would make too many attackers and it would be like 75 or like 80-20 or something like that.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
No.
We actually have plenty of ways to enjoy every single role in the game.
Yeah. Uh, Turns out when we got to making an Aria of Light and Shadow, we had made 0 attackers. So we were like, oh,
Wait,
okay,
that's
well,
hilarious.
might as well throw in 2 attackers to kind of round out the distribution because it's supposed to be about 50% of the cast. It's like 40% of the cast or somewhere around there. So let's put in some attackers because we just haven't been doing that. Um, Attackers
That's
are
really funny.
unique in design philosophy, or at least from what we've looked at, because designing attackers is weird. Um, they're supposed to do
Yeah.
damage, but if every ability does damage, you're kind of sitting here with 3 abilities that all do the same thing. So,
And it's like, why are you not just pressing the big one or the small one every turn or
right,
something like that?
it's very
These two
interesting.
definitely have mechanical flavor. I
Yeah.
promise.
Oh
These
yeah.
two we're not Was Haruno designed at the same time Rui was, like right after? Like, were these two actually the first two we made?
Yes, these were technically the first two
Okay.
we made.
These two were the very first custom characters we made for Wild Hunt Festival. So there is definitely a lot of growth that they've gone through in their mechanical sense. So they are really cool. Very, very excited to show you guys them. We don't have them like production sampled yet, but they will be coming whenever their art gets completed.
Yep. And as we've talked about with packets and side stories in general, we like to keep the characters on a certain theme. So Rights of Nature was a theme about ailments and playing with ailments in unique ways. The bosses in that packet also do that really interestingly. An Aria of Light and Shadow focuses on resources. So each of these characters has a unique resource, and one of them actually has a unique resource without having an extra card.
Yeah,
So,
I will say Haruno is very cool.
yeah.
You will like what she does.
Haruno's design is simultaneously simplistic and super weird. And it's really weird to describe her as an attacker, but she's kind of weirdly versatile without being versatile. Uh,
Yeah.
and then Rui does a bunch of damage, and just does a bunch of damage
But
in a bunch of different ways.
but yeah. She does damage, she builds a gauge. You when the gauge fills up, you spend the gauge. It transforms her abilities.
Yeah.
So not only are you building the gauge to do bigger damage, you're building the gauge to gain access to some really unique attacks that kind of like add utility to her character.
Yeah. And in terms of design, as we talked about, designing cat hackers, it actually turns out to be a little weird. It turns out, from what we've discovered in the design space of this game, every role has a very interesting flavor to it. So defenders, of course, usually have a taunt. There's only one of them, technically, but we are adding more defenders as the game goes on.
Yes.
Defenders have a taunt. They have damage mitigation. They have some sort of self-heal. Turns out they can do damage, but they don't really have supportive effects besides taunts, right? And that's not really support.
Right.
That's just redirect. Healers always heal. They don't actually buff outside of that heal, and they have ailment clear. And sometimes they do damage. Like, look at original Galateo. He just has
OG Galateo is my favorite sub DPS healer main.
1 mana out of 3 damage. Why not? I don't know. So
Yeah.
they do damage. Attackers. Well, see, if the other two roles can do damage, attackers already do damage. So what do they have? Attackers have selfish abilities. That's actually what Myra's focused on, is providing selfish things. And they have offensive utility, is what I'm going to call it.
Right.
So if you looked at Kuna, she's the prime example of offensive utility. She has, what is it, Gambit, which just removes a boss die. That's not something that defenders do. It's not something that healers do. But it is something that helps the whole team. So attackers have this weird space of, they have the big damage button a lot of the times, but they have like some sort of weird utility involved. Suika even has a utility that affects herself and another player. So
Right.
attackers, turns out designing an attacker to only do damage is just incorrect, because they should be doing something else, and it provides some diversity in their skill set. And then finally we have specialists. Turns out specialist is a weird design space too, because they kind of do everything. But the goal for specialist is either they do something that another class does with a weird way spin to it, or they provide the utility buffs that a healer don't. Some sort of defensive thing that a defender class doesn't do, and have access to ailment clears. So specialists are kind of, again, an all-rounder, but the way that they have access to those things is usually in manipulations,
A unique mechanic
that the original class doesn't have.
Yeah, and not to forget balance, of course, either.
Oh, yeah.
I think that balance is my favorite role, which is weird to say because I think the specialists have a very special place in my heart. the balance characters are like, yeah, man, I can like shoot off like 3 or 4 damage, but also taunt and do a backflip and heal myself, and like, uh, shout out to Okla with gold. What is it? Is it gold coin of
Gold
the
coin of
witch?
the witch.
Which is roll 2 die, activate the charge attack you want, or star colored mallet, where you roll 2 die and you just do that damage. Like
Yeah,
that's fun.
that is fun.
And sounds like something a specialist would have, but it's on a balance character. So, there is plenty of space to explore there too. But of course, leaving the class or the role specific things on and off the table at the same time, right? Like, no balance character is going to have the taunt and ailment clear and, like everything else that every role has, because then why would you play anything else? There's always a balance character. So,
Yeah.
it's a fun little design space.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we
So
don't have
like
any
bonus
balanced characters
shield.
for you now, but we do
It's to
have
come.
balanced characters. Much like how we
It's
do
coming.
have
Don't you
actual
worry.
defender characters coming out. Kamuri was like the half and half. We had debated on making him an attacker or defender or a hybrid attacker defender. We stuck with specialist just because we felt like that fit the role of like how they interpret their attacker and defender case. But we do have defenders coming out on the line.
Yes, and oh, she's a doozy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that when we get there. I guess now it should be on to the last remaining questions here. I see. Did I miss a release date or time on this?
No.
My best answer to that is no. You've missed nothing. We still are waiting. As of the last time we talked to Bradley, the last thing that we're waiting on is for the what's it called? For the marketing campaign to go
Yeah,
live.
so
Which
official
we thought.
marketing of Wildhunt Festival Chronicles, or whatever we're gonna call like this whole batch of expansions, is expected to start soon, TM. And by soon TM, I mean technically within the next week, as long as everything goes correctly. So marketing is going to start up soon, as it's given time to exist out in the social media space so that people can look at it. That's when the Kickstarter will go up. And then from there, it's a straight race to finishing everything that we haven't finished and getting it to the printer.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think I should add anything more on that. Since last time, we are still just waiting to insert the English text into the Donkai Survey Brigade book.
Yep.
That is literally the last thing. Now that we've got these production samples in, which are more like making sure that they all print good and getting an idea of what we're looking for. We're happy with these. We made mention that we want to make sure that the cards get a little thicker. But outside of that, it's making sure that our printer is souped up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And
of course,
yeah,
final checks.
we will.
We definitely want to do a final check.
Right. Yes, we will be full throttle with making more content for you guys as well. There'll be more Beyond the Hunts. We'll be playing actual, we're doing a whole playthrough of the Donkai Survey Brigade game mode. Don't care. We're doing the whole thing. We're doing a playthrough. We'll, if you guys are there, we'll do like a kind of like a Twitch plays thing where you guys can vote on what characters we put in the party. Maybe we'll have you guys choose some moves or something, and we'll have a blast. We're gonna hang out. It's gonna be awesome. Make sure to stay tuned on all Lion Wing socials and the Discord for more Wild Hunt Festival information.
Mm-hmm. And I see something about
And,
bonus
yeah.
shields. I think that question was in related to specialists. Shields are something we debated heavily, actually.
The answer, yes, by the way.
Shielding is difficult because, as we talked about with overhead for characters that they didn't sign up for, shieldings kind of fit into that. And unless we're doing something with a token system, unfortunately, putting shields on someone is weird because it's not something that they can immediately feel, and it's something that they would have to keep track of the next time they take damage, which is an ask that you're putting on another player that they didn't sign up for, which we're trying to reduce to a minimum. Right, like the poison.
Right.
Did,
However,
exactly.
However, the plan that we have in motion right now, hopefully coming probably core 2, I think, is to kind of look at that token system we were talking about and really get into the weeds with it. And we're kind of working through the idea space right now on how that applies to this whole, like,
Right.
extra little mechanics we're throwing in. So it's definitely something that's doable, but again, it has to be done with tact.
And that's a great question to also talk about. We talk about resources on an Aria of Light and Shadow. Haruno's special resource is shields, but
Yes.
they are unique to her, so it does the thing that we wanted to do with shields without providing that overhead. Because if you're playing Haruno, you signed up to manage your shields.
Right. And her, we can spoil it just a little bit now. We're at the end here anyway. Her shield mechanic's really cool. It is so she doesn't need an extra card like Fern said. It is the extra slots on her health bar.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
So it's not
And
even something
yeah.
we have to add more UI space to. We just need to add a new symbol to and tack it onto the end of her health bar. So we've been looking into shields and what that means for the game, and it's been an interesting journey. And while I think that's something that people love, and I love shields too. Like, I play a lot of League of Legends. My favorite characters have a
Yeah.
lot of shields.
Yeah. My favorite healer in Final Fantasy 14 is Scholar. Like, I love being able to put up mitigation before
Yeah.
the damage comes out. So I feel that.
So we want to be able to
I've been fighting Fern for a while,
we
actually.
want to be able to implement something like that without making things too complicated or providing too much overhead for characters. Because if we have like two healers that provide different kinds of shields and they're managed via like their own extra cards, and you're playing someone who isn't those two characters, but you have shields from both of them, you now have to look at two different things when you're taking damage, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's where it gets tricky. And we want to try to remove that kind of like, I don't know what's going on right now from the game. Because if that's
Right.
happening, like the compact kind of rules light, quote unquote, that Kradia has been, where it's simplistic in theory, but the gameplay is what's interesting and complicated. We don't want to provide, all the mechanics working together is super weird and you never know how it's going, but it's going to happen somehow, like that. So we've been looking into it and we want to make it happen, but right now there isn't a way to implement it in a way that we feel is super good yet.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. If it happens, it happens. Nothing to stress out over. We definitely like to hear what you have to say about things. So if you say, yes, we want shields, we want a shield healer, we want things like that, do let us know, because we do listen to you all. And even if we're saying, yeah, there's no way to do it right now, that does not mean that we're not going to try over and over again to
Exactly.
make it work, because we have so many things that we're like, we want this to happen, and it never works out. But we keep
Yeah.
trying.
I have come back to Fern with the want for a shield healer and the want for like some sort of actual dedicated summoner pet class multiple times. Multiple times.
Yeah.
And it will keep happening. But, until we find the right way to do it, it just can't.
Yeah.
So, we're trying.
But if you guys want certain things, I know we talked about this last Beyond the Hunt, about like, oh yeah, what if other people have character concepts? If you have character concepts and you're okay with us just like taking it and running with it, and we can talk to you about it too as well. Like, we will listen to you, and maybe we'll even try to do the thing that you want to do. Oh, wait, cooldown system pet shields. We talked about something very similar. We talked about a summoner character who could have an extra card that was modular like Kamuri's, that it was a summon, and we talked about that a lot. We talked about it in the token system. We talked about it with shields.
Yeah.
We have not landed exactly on a way to do a summoner character, but we have been looking into it, and we're trying to make it real. So, not now, maybe down the line. If you have any character concepts that you think are really awesome that you want to bring to us, even if you have abilities that you want to bring to us that you think are really cool, we'll listen. It might make it into a game eventually. It might not.
Make a thread in the Kradia forum.
Yeah,
Make a thread.
absolutely.
Drop a character idea. We'll discuss.
We'll always have fun talking about it. If you want to talk about characters and the way you utilize them, we'll always have fun talking about it. We're here to talk about everything Wild and Festival. That's the reason why we joined. We love the game to death, and we're trying to make everything moving forward just as cool as the original release.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up for us. Do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think we're pretty much there. Oh, actually, I have a I think this is technically visible already, but I'm just going to pop up the other render of the box that we have here, the Donkai Server Brigade box. Um,
Yeah.
as we said before, we're going to try as much as possible to get Donkai Server Brigade as its own product. It will be standalone, which is one of the most important parts of that thing, is that you'll be able to buy the Donkai Server Brigade and play through it uh, without having any other Karate Wild and Festival products. I almost said Karate again.
Your
Without having
turn.
other Wild and Festival products. You will be able to play just this box alone. Uh, However, you will have only the Donkai Server Brigade mode and 2 challenge bosses. If you want all the original stuff, that'll be available. In the form it will be available might depend. We're looking at all the things we need to do in order to get this across the finish line, and that might mean cutting the anniversary box alone in favor of the Chronicles box. We're looking into it. We're going to try as much as possible to make sure that we get as many options for you guys. But in the realm of economy and shipping, every extra box is extra cost because now we're dealing with different sizes, and that needs to be stacked and palleted differently on the ship. So anything we add like that is more cost, which means more cost to the user. And if we're already raising costs to tariffs, we don't want to make the box exorbitantly expensive. So more news down the line on that. There will definitely be Donkai Server Brigade as a standalone, almost certainly, and there will be the big Chronicles box where you can get everything for one price. Anniversary Edition, Donkai Server Brigade, and the Aria of Light and Shadow all together. I think that's pretty much everything we've got for today, as long as there aren't any last minute questions.
Not that I can see.
All right. Well, oh, okay. People are typing now. We'll see if we get last minute questions. For now, thank you everyone for showing up. I've been Fern. This is Jake Hero with me, and we look forward to seeing you on the actual campaign. Soon TM. Marketing starts hopefully next week. Depends on
Bradley, we're coming for you.
We'll see you soon, everyone. Thank you so much for
Bye,
coming.
everybody.
Thanks for talking, and we'll see you on the next episode of Beyond the Hunt. Hopefully next month.
Woo.